It is Tony.
I got it.
This is Tony Manfredonia. This is what, your third time?
Third time.
Yeah,
Number 3.
time. Yeah, he's a composer, great musician. He did sound bites a couple of years ago. And has a lot of experience in the world of video game music. So here we go. Yeah.
Thank you, Brady.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming in.
Of course, my pleasure. So, today you're going to be talking about landing your first game audio gig. I'm even going to just use the word game audio because there's so many audio things you can do in the video game industry outside of music. I myself, I largely sit in the music world. In fact, I never touch sound design ever because I am terrible at it. I like to just make the notes and the things sound pretty and pretty music. That's my specialty. When I first got started, I lumped myself in the composer and sound designer realm of things, but I found that I really gravitated toward music, and every time I had to sit down and make sound effects, I was like, I would love nothing more than someone else to take this job. So yeah, either way, there's so much you can do. So I'm a composer, singer, songwriter. As you heard, I just did a little pop piano thing. I mean, I've been kind of getting back into my songwriter roots these days just because I've missed it after 10 years of writing video game soundtracks. I do very cinematic, symphonic, orchestral stuff. It's kind of where I sit. Largely instrumental, sometimes vocal. Based up in Petoskey. In fact, I wrote a song about Petoskey. If you want to listen to that later, you can. The fun little folk thing. So I've been working in the game industry about 10 years, largely independent games. So kind of like in film, you've got like Hollywood and indie films. Very similar experience with the game industry. You've got like AAA studios, Sony, Nintendo, Ubisoft, all those big companies. And then you have indie, right, where the team might be a team of 1 or a team of 3. Very small. And I guess there's also what they would call AA or like A&a half. Where it's sort of these larger studios, but aren't quite on the budgetary scales of, you know, Blizzard or, again, the bigger kind of companies. So some of my credits, if anyone is interested, I won't be going through all of these, but I will show you some of the Minecraft one. That's when I did, Minecraft did an official Universal Studios. They recreated Universal Studios in Minecraft and released it as official DLC. So I got to make the music for that. That was very fun. The other titles there listed, all indie, they're very indie titles. You can check those out later if you'd like. But I just want to show you a couple of tunes of mine to kind of get us going. Here, we'll listen to this trailer. I got to make trail music for this as well. This was fun. We'll talk more about that if we have time. There it is. Thank you. I definitely want to talk more about the process of doing that trailer, because that was, the amount of back and forth was insane. Okay, and then this is for one of the indie games working on, right? So that was like a big AAA Minecraft, full-blown AAA thing. This is much more indie, but despite that fact, I still want to go all out and do something crazy orchestra. So this kind of feels like Eastern European classical music in a way. It's also fun. This is called, the game is called Call of Saragnar, kind of an old school RPG. was the Budapest Scoring Orchestra. So there's all these orchestras around the world. You can kind of Skype in and have them record your stuff. It's very cool. Happy to chat more about that if we have questions later. So what will we do today? Very straightforward. Getting started in game audio, expectations, and workflow, as well as how to create a sustainable career doing this. Again, I've been doing it 10 years, and I feel like I'm always learning something new, but I feel like I've been doing it long enough to know how to guide all of you along the way. And at the end, I'm going to keep all of this relatively short and sweet because I really just want to have a nice open discussion, Q&A style. I just love having conversations. So getting started. The process. We live in a very internet world these days. And so, as someone who lives literally in rural Petoskey, I've never lived in LA, I've never lived in New York City, I've never lived in any of these big hubs. I have done everything entirely from the internet, and I'm able to make a full-time income doing this. So the 3 things I would encourage you to do, if you learn nothing else, this first sentence, this first phrase, create, share, connect. Create stuff, share it, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, all your places, and then connect with people who are also doing the same thing, or people you resonate with. Rinse, repeat. Literally, the more you do that, like if you create stuff, you share it, and you show up, and you say, hey, here's my thing, hey, your thing's pretty cool, and you do that over and over and over and over and over, the jobs will come. Like it sounds simpler than it actually is, because it's pretty simple. So there are some pretty good ways you can start to do this. There are things called game jams. Anyone know what a game jam is? All right, tell us what a game jam is.
You're given a topic, a subject, something, a word maybe, and a group of people, maybe it's one person, maybe it's 10, come together, create within a small window of time, as best they can, a game that has to do with that topic given.
Yes, that's exactly it. So a great example is what is called Ludum Dare. I don't know what that stands for, but we're just going to roll with it. So Ludum Dare, I think they're on number like 53 or something now, but they do it maybe twice or 3 times a year. The last one I did was 35, I think back in 2016. And the team that I did it with, the animator, the programmer that I did it with, they still come to me and say, hey, we need music for this project. We need music for this project. I was in college, I think so it was, I just graduated, did it back then. Same guys coming back to me looking for music. So game jams, I think the topic was like, I forget what the topic was, but you have 48 hours to make a game that works and functions. And so it can go one of 2 ways. You either leave the event like wanting to grab the other person by the neck, or you leave and you're like, oh man, that was the greatest thing ever, right? There's a camaraderie to it. And the camaraderie will then, again, it's like it's almost like you're trapped in a room for 48 hours and it's like you gotta become best friends or else the game's not gonna happen, right? And that leads to more opportunities. So I cannot emphasize game jams enough, if and when you have the time earlier on to make these things happen. Because they're pretty intense. There are some that are longer, but generally they're in that like 48-hour to 72-hour window. Second thing, in-person events. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot around here. I would love nothing more than to be like a game dev meetup in Traverse City. I would love nothing more. So maybe one of you can start one, and I will be the first in line to come, because that'd be wonderful. But there are places like PAX, I don't know what that stands for, PAX East, PAX West. It's kind of like a big video game consumer event. However, developers also show up and showcase their indie games, or even the larger studios, Nintendo and stuff, they show up, they're showcasing their projects. So PAX East and PAX West they're on the more affordable side. I think there's one in Boston, and then there's one out in California, but I believe there's also a PAX like in Texas. I forget when maybe it's PAX Central or something. I know there's a PAX in Texas. So worth checking out. Then there's GDC. Unfortunately, GDC is ridiculously expensive. However, what you can always do, and what friends of mine have done in the past, is if you don't want to pay for the ticket, just buy a flight, stay in a hotel nearby. You're going to be surrounded by developers near the area. Like any restaurant, any coffee bar, you don't even have to go into the space. There will be game developers around to say hello to, and game composer meetups, and all sorts of stuff. So GDC is another one. There's also smaller meetups. Again, I really wish we had one in Traverse City. Someone please take note and make one. And then lastly, but I would say one of the most important things is social media and Discord. Discord is blowing up. When I first started doing this, it was forums, like old school forums, which then quickly moved into Twitter, and now Twitter's kind of blowing up and falling apart. There's a lot of stuff happening on TikTok, a lot of developers on TikTok as well, but Discord, there are dedicated servers on Discord. Let's say there's a game developer making a game. They have their own Discord server. In that Discord server will be just random consumers, but also fellow developers who want to know how they're doing. Like, how are you making your game? How are you programming it? Discord, 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 cannot emphasize that enough. It's really, I actually myself, I need to get better at jumping on Discord for this kind of thing, because it's wonderful. So yeah, more than anything, showing up is more than anything else. Because what will end up happening is that game developers, in the indie scene especially, are going to be more inclined to hire someone they know, rather someone who can do technically a better job, right? So let's say there's a sound designer who's been killing it, making sound for like 15 years, 20 years. The game developer down the street, because they've known you for the last few years, they're going to hire you because they know you. They know how you operate. They know how you work. If they have an unlimited budget, maybe they'll do like a guest composer by like Austin Wintory or Grant Kirkhope or someone, just because they can, to have sort of like that extra bit of marketing material. But generally they want to work with someone they trust, someone they know, right? Which is why making friendships, just hanging out with people on the internet, in person, most important thing you can do. All right, so then how does one build a connection, right? So this is such a, forgive me for being so interesting about this, but it can be really hard to like just make a friend. Like, I know that sounds ridiculous, but it can be so hard to like, hey, I like that game that you are making, or like, hey, did you play the latest Star Wars, whatever. Like, it can be so oddly difficult, but I promise if you just kind of act natural and just say, hey man, I love what you're making here. Or like, I guess the only thing I would recommend is don't come out of the woodwork and say, hi, I'm a composer, here's my card. Avoid that, please avoid that. Like, at all costs, please avoid that. Get to know them. What are they making? How are they making it? Right? What interests you about it? What does it remind you of? Open up those conversational doors with them and what they're creating. And take note that I'm not really even mentioning fellow music people. I'm mentioning developers, right? Primarily the people who aren't already doing your skill. It's great to have a community of fellow like-minded music audio creators, sound creators, but the people who will hire you, largely, are going to be the people not doing that thing. Unless they're looking for an assistant, right? So someone who's way up the chain, they need an assistant to do music and sound. That's a different story. So it is good to connect with them as well. But so find like-minded individuals, right? Are you into puzzle games? Animal Crossing, right? The thing that we were all playing when COVID was happening. We were all playing Animal Crossing, right? Or RPGs, Final Fantasy, World of Warcraft. Like what fires you up if you are into games or have any somewhat of an interest in games? What fires you up? Find those like-minded individuals. DM, email, like people are generally pretty receptive to that type of thing. So yeah, I would just say open up the conversation with, thank you for making your thing, it looks cool, would love to stay connected. If they ask you, hey, what do you do? Well then say, oh, I make sound, or I make music, or I don't know, make hyper pop metal. And like that might be the very thing they're looking for, right? So what I love about the video game industry as a whole is how open it is to the style of sound, right? You've got Doom with heavy metal. You've got Sonic the Hedgehog with the more FM synthesis kind of retro stuff. There's just so much window of opportunity. So just a quick look at sort of the difference between indie and AAA. I wouldn't worry about this too much when you're just getting started, unless you know for a fact that you're like, all right, I want to make sound design for the next Spider-Man game. Okay, if that is like really locked in for you, then going toward the AAA style of existence might be better suited for you, right? Maybe make some games on an indie scale first, but kind of have the AAA land in the back of your mind. Because that's a bit more corporate. You know, I don't have as much experience with it as I do indie, but it's a bit more like you have specialized roles, like a junior audio designer, or senior composer, or lead composer, or just a designated mixing engineer, right? The bigger the team is, the more specialized the roles become. In the indie world, you're going to be wearing multiple hats, composer, sound designer, implementer, audio editor, sometimes just like splicing up the trailer, like you become a video editor as well. Like indie land, you wearing, I mean, we got some awesome hats in the back row there. Like you're wearing both of those combined and a few more on top of it, right? So it can get to be a lot. So then expectations and workflow. This is just, again, today's kind of an overview of like, this is what game audio looks like. Questions, if you want to get into the nitty gritty at the end, we can. But typical workflow is like, let's say, okay, so what's your name?
Ted.
Ted, what's your name?
Veronica.
Veronica. Okay, so Veronica, you're gonna be my guest sound designer today. So Ted says, all right, hey Veronica, you make killer sounds. I love how retro they feel. Whatever it is. What kind of music or sound are you into? Name anything.
We can just go with retro.
All right, we're going with retro. All right, Veronica makes the best retro sounds in the world. All right, so Ted says, Veronica, I love your sounds. I'm making a game and I need, can you make sound for my game? Well, the first question you would want to ask is, okay, how much sound do you need? What's the game like, right? And then you two would put your heads together and like create an asset list. Or if you're making music, who are the musicians in the room versus like sound design? Like, all right, what's your name?
Ayla.
Ayla? All right, so Ayla's making music, right? So Veronica's making sound for Ted, and Ayla's making music for Ted, all right? Ted's running the show here. And he's like, all right, Ayla, what's your favorite kind of music?
Folk music.
Folk music, all right. So you're making like a real grassroots game. We need some nice folk music with some retro sounds and some folk music. All right, so I'm gonna like lose track of all of these as examples now. So Ayla, then you may know, okay, I've got 8 levels in my game. I need music for each level. I need a single loop for each level. Okay, Ayla, that gives you the position of, okay, I gotta make 8 songs. Very simple, straightforward. Then you, Ayla, and Veronica can put your heads together and say, okay, as you work on the music and sound together, how can we make it so that the sound doesn't interfere with the music and the music doesn't interfere with the sound? And that's where then the audio people kind of put their heads together and just kind of make it work, right? So on an indie team, you two would be communicating probably all the time, and Ted, I'm sure would be coming in. But he may say, hey, I got to program and make my art over here. You guys take care of it, right? You two take care of it. So every indie game experience, in my experience, has been very different, where it's like I'm doing all of it, and sometimes I'm just given a list. Literally a game I've been on for almost 3 years that's coming to an end in March. They gave me, from the get-go, they said, here's the list. These are the tracks you're going to be doing every month for the next 3 years. I'm like, this is wonderful. I don't have to think about anything. I just got to make the music, right? Other times it's like, hey, we need 3 more tracks. The game's coming out in 2 months. We got to get 3 tracks done now because we forgot about them. That has also happened, and that is a terrible place to be in. So, like, every experience is going to be a little bit different. Usually then you create it, you revise it, and then you implement it. I'm going to show you a bit of the implementation in a second. In terms of software, this is pretty much mostly what you'll ever need from on an indie level, is like, where can you make the sound or music? How do you implement it? And then like, what's the engine that they're using for the game? There's Game Maker, there's Unreal and Unity engine. Those are the most popular, I'd say, in the indie scene. But then we have to think about, okay, Veronica's making all these sounds, Ayla's making all this music, Ted is over here making art, not even thinking about sound, and then Veronica and Ayla's saying, okay, wait a minute, what happens in the level when you cross this bridge? It feels like we need something more there, we need something to change there. So then you say, okay, well what if I add a few more layers to my music once you cross the bridge? Or you jump over the cannon, whatever it is. This is where game music differs, or game audio differs from literally any other medium, which is why I love it. So much different than film, because it's not linear, it's dynamic, it's interactive. I could turn this computer on or open a treasure chest, and something happens audibly. It's amazing, right? So this gives you, as the sound designer, a whole new world of possibilities. And to make even more sounds, because you're adding more layers and all this stuff. So, just to show you a very, very simple and straightforward example, this is from a game I'm working on now, kind of an ambient cello loop. The software we're looking at is what is called Fmod. Fmod and Wise, there's another software called Wise, they both kind of do the same thing, where, if you can see, it almost looks like a DAW, basically like a music software, but as you can see here, this is kind of, it plays once through here, and then these blue bars is what's called the loop region, right? So in game music, if someone's just standing there, you're not moving the character's just standing there like, doing their like little idle animation or whatever for like 3 hours, the music has to keep going, right? So this is what is called a loop region. And in this instance, in this case, what I'm showcasing to the developer, because he had a question about this, was his prompt to me was, all right, we're in a castle, we're going to the final boss, we're going to like a big ending boss you gotta walk toward, and as you get closer to the final room, we want the music to get louder, right? So basically silence and just sound effects at the very beginning, the entrance, the doorway, and then as you get closer, the music comes a little bit more and more. So what I'm doing is there's a distance parameter up there, it's kind of blurry, but that little gray rectangle is a distance parameter, you'll see it in action in a second. The beginning plays, and then this loops, and within this loop region is 3 different loops, randomized, right? So it's not the same thing over and over. It's like a cello, it's kind of like this cello melody. And every time it loops, it changes, right? So that adds variety, and then what I have here is also a cutoff filter, right? So as you get closer, we get more high frequency energy, right? Because if you've ever noticed this, like if you have a rock band playing in here, but you stand out there, you hear a lot of the thumping, but you don't get a lot of the high energy. That's kind of the idea that I was going for. So here we go. Sorry, throwing a lot at you, probably just better to show than tell. Right, so if you were far away, it'd be more like this. So the further distance, the softer it is. Decrease the distance, get closer, audio comes back in. Now notice, when it loops, it's going to change the specific loop. It's a little bit different. And I'm showcasing here adding the low pass. Highs are muffled, highs come back. Right, so this is this is what I would say is an extremely basic example of the possibilities you can do. You can add so many more tracks to this, you can do so much more. But I would say in most cases, you're not going to be dealing with super complicated stuff on an indie level. When you get into AAA land, things get real complex real quick. But this is a very, very basic, very simple, Fmod-wise, something NMC, maybe if you haven't played with Fmod or Wise yet, is that going to be happening at NMC sometime? Maybe?
I hope so.
That'd be great. That'd be great. Because it really, like, once you get in here and do stuff like this, your brain, the creativity just suddenly explodes. Because you're like, ooh, I want to add this or I want to add that, you know? So, anyway, it's real fun. Once you get used to it, it's really fun. Okay. Then lastly, before a bit of Q&A here, creating a sustainable career. I want to talk about this a bit more businessy. I would strongly recommend, if this is something that's at all interesting to you, I would strongly recommend diversifying your income stream in whatever way possible initially. Okay? Whatever way possible initially. Diversify the income stream. Right? Teach lessons. Play live shows. You can sell music or sound asset packs. In other words, create a pack of, I don't know, music for an RPG game or a first-person shooter or something, and just sell that on the asset store. That's a viable way to make money. There's so many things you can do. Teach lessons. I teach with ThinkSpace. I don't know if you've ever heard of ThinkSpace Education. They're a YouTube channel kind of thing. I tutor for them. Sync licensing, whole other thing, right? So just produce music for trailers. Produce music to be used on Netflix. Produce for other artists, work a 9 to 5. Doesn't matter. All I can emphasize enough is when you're first getting started in game audio, diversify your income stream, because at least I have found, and my peers have found, that it takes a bit to get it rolling, right? But once it rolls, Once the snow starts rolling, it rolls. But it can, you may shake someone's hand, and they may not need your music or audio for like 5 more years after that, right? So it just takes a bit to just kind of push things forward, because especially in indie games, development cycles are very long. Or short, depending on the size of the game, but I've been working on a game, the big orchestra thing you heard. I think I've been working on that one since 2016 on and off, because it's a 3-man team, and the game is about the size of Skyrim, if anyone's played Skyrim. It's like huge, massive, and it's like one guy doing it all himself. So we're trying to get a publisher, we're like trying to push him to like get a publisher, like, hey, let's expand the team a bit, because I'm gonna be like 68 by the time this thing is done. But I love the developer. He's wonderful. But we always joke about it, like we're just taking our grand old time here. So development cycles vary. So you're gonna need ways to financially fill that space. And it's okay to do more than one thing. Embrace it. As you can see here, I'm ridiculous. I wear this teal tie. I make videos about making What If the Scientist by Coldplay was in a musical, and I add this orchestra stuff. Like, I do stuff like that because then it allows me to orchestrate for other artists, just make music as a songwriter, connect and collaborate. Like, I love having the more diverse style of income because it just makes things a little bit more stable, at least at first. There's going to be a time where you probably don't have the time to do it all anymore, and that's okay. All right, yeah, I'm so excited about this. All right, so income strategies. Negotiating rates. We're going to talk about business today. I love talking about this. This is so much fun. Money talk doesn't have to be uncomfortable. I love talking about it because it's so important, and it's so good to just kind of get in the habit of it. First thing I do, let's say, all right, so we got Ted, we got Victoria? Veronica, okay, got the V right, and then Ayla. All right, now, the 3 of you are like, okay, we want to bring on the big guns. We want to get Sabrina Carpenter to do a guest track. All right, Sabrina Carpenter. So then you go in to say, okay, Sabrina, we need you to sing a song for us for our game. If I were in Sabrina's shoes, this is what I would do. I would quote high and negotiate down every time. What you would do is you would establish your value saying, or even better yet, let's say you say, okay, Tony, we want you to sing a guest track. I'm like, all right, great. I've been waiting years to do a ballad for a video game. So you come to me and I say, all right, here's my rate. Let's say like my tummy number is like, I don't know, we're just gonna go crazy. We're gonna get $500,000. Just crazy, exorbitant. It's not a realistic number. But let's just say $500,000. I'll sing you a song. You're like, okay, well I can't do that, but I could do, I could do $300,000. Right, Ted, you got the big bucks. You're gonna say $300,000 for a ballad. Right on. All right. If my initial tummy number was like $250,000, like that would be great. If I can get 250 grand for a single song, I'd be rolling in it. That'd be amazing. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna double it. I'm gonna give you the $500,000 as the quote. Then you bring it down to 300. Well, then I just got $50,000 more than my original number, right? So it's not like you're not cheating the system in a sense, but you're establishing value. You're saying, okay, this is how much I would need to live comfortably. I'm going to start higher than that because worst case scenario, they bring it down and it's even higher than my initial number. This is a scenario that I have done time and time again, and one of my biggest mentors who's been doing game audio for 20 years, this is the system he told me. It doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes you end up getting less than what you'd like, and that's fine. What I will say, what is your value? Ask yourself that value. What would you need to live sustainably off of a single gig, maybe mixed in with your other income? Whatever that number is, let's say $5,000 for a 30-minute soundtrack. Very modest number for that amount of music. Quote, 8,000. They may bring it down to 7,000, right? Or they may bring it down to 5,000. Then you get what you want, right? But rather than starting at the initial number that you have in your gut, and then they bring it lower than that, well, then you just kind of potentially lost a bit, right? So it's tricky to navigate, and money for people, they see the sticker shock, there's all that stuff. So whatever you do, I'm going to give you a little phrase you can use for your work in the future, because it does help them, it does help kind of ease it up a little bit. One thing I want to mention, always have a written agreement, always, no matter what you do, even if you get $0, always have a contract. Please, I beg you, have a contract. Even if you get $0, have a contract. Because you don't necessarily want to do something for free, I don't think I have. Oh yeah, yes. Get to do work for no money, but don't do it for free. What do I mean by that? Let's say they can't pay you anything. Let's say Sabrina Carpenter says, "I'll do a song for $500,000," and you're like, "Well, I got $0." Well, then can you do a service share, right? In other words, okay, I'll make you the music, but maybe could you give me some art for my next trailer or a new logo? I need a new logo. Could you do some art for my logo, right? So try to, if you're going to do something for $0, literally a $0 transaction, try to find a way to build some type of trade scenario, right? Work for work, art for art, whatever you want to call it. But always have a contract. Even if you don't do that, please have something in writing saying, here's my sound, here's my music, I give you this music, or if they may ask for your rights, it's a whole big topic. But like whatever the transaction is, whatever the agreement is, have it in writing. Bullet point, star, fireworks, please, please have stuff in writing. Because what you don't want is, you don't want something to kind of go under the bus and things get messy. Having an agreement is good. Okay, enough about that. This is the exact, I'm giving you, please like take a picture. It's gonna be recorded, great. I'm not ashamed to say that this is the exact quote that I use every single time I'm basically giving a quote to a developer. They want me to make music for them, here's my rate, or here's my quote, this is what it would cost. Normally for this type of project, I charge blank. But seeing as you're self-funded, Kickstarter funded, a friend of a friend, whatever it is, kind of easing it off of their shoulders a little bit, how much of that number are you comfortable paying? What this does is it puts the ball in their court, right? You're saying, this is what I normally charge. This is me establishing the value. This is me saying, for music, for this project, I would charge $8,000. But seeing that you're self-funded, how much of that number are you comfortable paying? They say, okay, well out of that I could do $5,000. Goes back to that original number that I had in my gut when I first saw how much music they needed, okay? Literally, this has never failed. It has never failed because it takes the pressure off. It takes the load off. It's not like I charge this and nothing less. It's like, no, this is my value. How much are you comfortable with this? And if they say, let's say you quote $5,000 for a 30-minute soundtrack, and they say, hey, I could do $500. Well, then you say, okay, well, let's talk about this further. Maybe I could do $500 up front, and then maybe 40% of the royalties of the game sold. Then you can kind of go a bit deeper and go back and forth with the developer. But at this stage, you probably are already on good terms with them, that the conversation then just happens much more organically. You don't have to worry about it as much. But this initial quote can be terribly daunting. So it takes practice. It takes practice. So final thoughts for you. Before, again, I really want to kind of converse about this. Start small, but get started. Make stuff. Have fun with it. Just make stuff, share it, connect with people, have a good time. Network in whatever way makes sense for you. Maybe some of you here have big plans to move to Los Angeles or Montreal or all these big hubs, wherever. But do it in whatever way works for you. I've been doing this for 10 years. I have never been to GDC once. I'm not ashamed to say that because it's like, I'm kind of, being honest, sometimes I don't really feel like flying out to San Francisco. But I've made it work on the internet because it works for me. It works for my lifestyle. Diversify your skills and your income. Play around with that Fmod middleware if you want. Create with what you have rather than waiting for what you don't have. Didn't really talk about this before, but when you start getting into game audio, you're gonna have people sending you references. Like, oh, we want it to sound like this. Ooh, can you make sounds like that? Rather than just spending $3,000 to buy the fanciest library and gear, literally stick with what you've got. If you've got a 200 pair of headphones and a very small, like, Scarlett, 2 in, 2 out, little, start with what you have before you just go and buy like a board that looks like this, But if you're starting here, at least you got some great gear in the classrooms. Stay patient. It is a marathon game. It's a marathon game. Short, small story. There was a forum post from a game developer that he was working on something cool. I think it was like in 2015. I sent him a message. I said, hey, man, I love what you're doing. Very cool. Love what you're doing. Just put my little signature, my website at the bottom. Didn't even say, hey, I make music, hire me. I didn't say that at all. I just said, love what you're doing. Keep it up. 4 years later, I get an email saying, hey, we saw your forum post about 4 years ago and we're working on this game. You want to come and make music? I was like, okay, that kind of came out of nowhere. That will happen. The game that I showed you, that that looping example, totally a random email that happened on a random day in like the middle of 2021. Hey, we're doing this big, we need 90 minutes of music for our big RPG. Can you do it? I was like, sure, I have no idea who you are, but sure, I'll do it. Yeah. So be kind to yourself. It takes time. It's a bit of a long game, but it will get rolling sooner than you think. And again, if you want to take any, I am an open book. You want to take a screenshot, doesn't matter, just my name, literally anywhere. Reach out anytime if a question comes up at any point. I love talking about this kind of thing. Just email, DMs, doesn't matter. Because I just want to help you out. I really want to help you out if this is something that interests you. All right? So, that is the big umbrella overview of working in game audio, but I really just want to open this up. So, any questions, any thoughts, comments, concerns? Yes?
What is your process of like when you're composing a piece?
Process composing a piece. Okay, so let's say, actually great example, working on a kind of a big battle tune for one of the games I'm on, and they said, here's a reference track. We want it to sound like this. I say, okay. So I think about, okay, texture, what kind of instruments are being used, what's the vibe, what key is it in, and then I'll just kind of come up with something similar, right? Like just kind of leaning into what I heard, kind of absorbing what I heard. I'm a vocalist, so I tend to create a lot of the thoughts just singing, humming. It doesn't matter what it is, just and then I take that to the keyboard. What does it kind of feel like harmonically? Then I take it to my software. What does it feel like texturally? Like what instruments, what? So it usually starts from the voice to the piano to the software. And then I send it to them, and I think I'm on revision number 3 for this specific track. They were very specific. They're like, no, we want this. I'm like, if I take it one step further, I'm gonna be infringing on copyright here. So I was like, I'm being very careful. But it can be tough, the back and forth. Anyway, does that help?
Yeah.
Good, okay. Yes?
So I know cross-platform has gotten a lot better, but I do
Yeah.
have to ask,
Mhm.
do you personally use a complete Windows setup, a complete Apple setup, or do you mix both?
I am a Windows guy.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Because I've
Yeah.
I've noticed you can like develop audio on Mac no problem, but then when
Yeah.
you try to start implementing it into games, that's where having those different platforms kind of start becoming
Yeah.
helpful. Yeah.
So I will say so when you use something like that Fmod that I showed you,
Yeah.
that's the term that for Fmod or Wise, those two software. Colloquially you'll hear it as middleware, right? Kind of like a middleman software, right?
Right.
You've got the audio and the engine. Here's the music you made. Here's the game engine. The middleware is what is called Fmod or Wise, or one of those, usually one of those two. So what's nice about that process, if the developer wants that middleware in there, is that if you're using PC or Mac, that middleware software kind of takes care of any weird differences between Mac or PC, just because it's its own software that then gets baked into the game engine. So it doesn't really matter what it was made in, Windows or Mac, it doesn't matter at that point.
So
Yeah.
at that point, it can translate to like
Yes.
core audio on Apple or direct sound on Microsoft.
Correct. At
Yeah.
that point, yes, because
Yep.
it's you're literally creating a build. Like here's
Yeah.
the build of this Fmod project. I'm sending it to the developers. They plug it into Unity or Unreal or whatever they're using. From within within their engine, they're looking at your Fmod build and pulling all the details from that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That's very
Great
helpful.
question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyone else, please? Yes, in the
So,
back.
would you happen to know what that process would look like from getting it from Fmod to a game engine? I use GameMaker Studio, so I don't know if it would be like APIs or if it translates it to a stream of code.
So, I admittedly, Game Maker, now maybe they've changed it, you can let me know if they've changed it, but last time I made a game with Game Maker, or worked on a game, it was 2018, and that didn't have any Fmod capabilities back in 2018.
I don't know if it does.
Yeah, so
Or not.
usually, so within like Unreal or Unity, there's literally like an Fmod, like, if you want to just call it like an Fmod box, right? You pull it open, I mean, it's like all the stuff that I would then kind of mix down, if you want to think of it that way, or build down. When you open that up in Unity or Unreal, it's very clear. It's pretty straightforward. the programmer would have to do some additional kind of programming, like triggering events, for example. Like I can give them the events, all the various events of the game, I can give them that, but they still have to say, trigger this event, set it, trigger it 30 seconds after this dialogue, for example. Like they would still have to program that
Yeah.
in their own way. Yeah.
That's probably
Yeah.
an API or something I gotta download.
Yeah.
If there is.
Right. I wish I knew more about programming, but admittedly my FMOD knowledge typically comes from the people who I'm working with. They're like, hey, do this in FMOD and it'll work easier for us. So I'm like, okay, sure. I'll just do what you say, The programmer has the final say, I would say, in most cases. Anyone else, please? Yeah.
What software do you use for making music?
Yeah, I use Cubase. So I'm a big Cubase guy. I also use Sibelius, which is notation. So I do, again, when I'm dealing with orchestra, I have to kind of know notation. That's how I started, actually. Before I even knew what a DAW was, I was just writing sheet music, having people play it, kind of like a classical background, I guess. So that, getting into Cubase was, it just felt seamless to me. Something about Cubase just looks nice. MIDI editing is nice in Cubase. But anyone else, please, just open book, please. Dave.
How important has music theory been in what you do? Knowing about music theory and having piano lessons?
I'd say pretty important, right? Especially for the type of music that I make. It's very, again, when you're dealing with an orchestra, music theory is extremely helpful. But it depends, I would say it depends on the kind of music. Because I actually know a couple game composers who never had formal theory knowledge, but they make some good stuff. They probably just use their ears, But I will say the more you know theory and the more you kind of know how voicings and counterpoint and all that kind of stuff works, the easier it becomes to make whatever it is that you do make. Even if you make heavy metal, for example. Gosh, study some Bach and then play a nice heavy metal solo that sounds like a Bach fugue. It'd be amazing, right? So, anyway, great question. You had one, right?
Yeah. You big contact libraries, right?
How long do we have? Do we have an hour or more? So Contact is great. Contact is great because it hosts so many other libraries. Like I love the Noir piano by Native Instruments. It's a beautiful tone. Cinematic Studio Strings, beautiful tone, works wonderfully in Contact. However, I've been doing a lot more orchestral tools libraries these days, and they have their own engine called Sine, which the way that the microphone placements work in Sine engine, I'm like, I wish Contact did this. So I think it's a win-win across the board. I think they're all good. Yeah, but I'm on Team Sine. #Team Sine. Anyone else? Please, let's keep it rolling. I don't know how much we got. It's 12:05, and I know you got stuff.
Oh, you keep going.
I got plenty of time. Okay. All right. Let's converse. Yes,
Do you have a favorite video game soundtrack?
I do. It's World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft, because there's 24 hours plus of it. It's been a game since 2004. I've been playing it since 2004. Who here was born after 2004? Oh my gosh, yes, I've been playing it before Halo was even born, is how long I've been playing. Okay, so but I highly, if you're into anything orchestral, symphonic, but ambient at the same time, highly recommend World of Warcraft soundtrack. You've got 20 years of music to digest. It's wonderful. Wonderful. Great question. Yeah.
Do you have a specific game or game franchise that it's your dream to work on someday?
World of Warcraft. Yeah, what they do, I've literally been tweeting at the developers every time they do this for the last 10 years. They do an art contest where they will literally say, okay, we're gonna do an art contest and people can submit their own artwork, concept art, to then be featured on the World of Warcraft page or have developed as an item in the game. I'm like, can you please do a music contest, please? And so every expansion would have maybe a guest track or two. I think it'd be so awesome. But they're pretty tight knit over there in Blizzard Entertainment. Their music team they're locked in at this point. But it would be a dream. Even one track, even half of a track, please. But it's on record. It's on the recording too, so you can just send that to Blizzard. Keep it rolling. Yeah.
What's your favorite project you worked on?
All right. So my favorite project is Call of Sargon. I'm gonna show you. Let me see if I can get the trailer. I'm gonna take my HDMI off. Call of Saragnar, despite the fact that I've been working on it for almost 10 years, periodically, I think there were 3 years, a 3-year stretch where I didn't touch it at all. It's very slow moving, but I love the developer, I love his mission, I love his vision. He's been kind of avoiding getting a publisher who would potentially detract from his mission, because when you get a publisher involved on a game, they can sometimes have a lot of creative say, saying like, okay, can you make this a little bit more engaging? Can you take out this chapter of the game? They tend to have a lot of control sometimes. So he wants to just make his vision of like making a game that looks like 1995 PC, and it's so wonderful to work with him because I get to lean into sort of my classical-ish background slightly and make some kind of like these almost like where each standalone piece feels like a movement of a symphony in a way. Call of Saragnar trailer. Let's see. Trailer 9 months ago. That's probably the newest one. Yeah. Alright. I'm gonna bring this back on here. This HDMI.
Yeah.
Apologies. Alright. So that's the marketing team at the moment.
Is he supposed to be showing up
Oh,
there?
what?
You're probably doubling, or.
Oh, maybe with the-
You
with
need
the
to
PowerPoint.
mirror it, yeah.
Yeah. Let's Oh yeah, what in the world? What if I do this? I have an idea.
Just make a little click and drag.
I have an idea. Because I don't know how to change it on the fly, the mirror image thing, so we're just gonna do this. We're gonna change,
Should be able to just
insert
drag the
video.
window over, right?
Yeah.
I don't see it.
It's a secondary desktop right now, I believe. So, assuming that you just basically extended your desktop, if you find where your mouse goes to either side, it might do
No,
that.
here, I'll just do this, it'll be easier. Watch this. We wanna add a video from the internet.
You just
Alrighty.
have to do it with the computer.
There you go. If I start from this slide. Hey, there it is. Alright. So that's the marketing team for the game at the moment in the keep. You'll see the visuals, it's very old school. Very old school. So it has what I love his creative direction with this is that his whole idea is to recreate what it felt like to play a game on your PC in like 1995, where they had the characters there were they're literally people who stood in front of a green screen to then he I guess somehow captured them and made them as images. I mean, he's going all out. Like it's full of passion. So I love working with him the best, for sure. Easily. Yeah.
On that note, do you know if those are just, for those characters, are those just sprites, or does he have actual FMV cutscenes for them?
Actual FMV.
He does, okay.
He's going all in.
All in, okay,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, he wants to fly, he's based in Slovenia. He wants to fly me out and get as the traveling bard. You know, put on a medieval costume. So I think there are going to be bard songs, so that'll give you an excuse to sing in a video game, which I'm pumped about. Yeah. Go ahead.
So, one of the things that I'm conflicted about is that everyone I know that's video game is all video game music and stuff, and I don't know anyone who's just like sound design and whatnot, which is
Yeah.
I feel like where I would probably excel
Sure.
at. How would I, do you know, like, I guess any advice on how to get into that, how to start working on that?
Yeah, so I didn't touch about demo reels, but this is a good place to start. It's actually great, this is a great question to talk about demo reels. So, if you go to my, well, I can't show it on this because PowerPoint, well, either way. If you go to my website, you'll see, I don't do what they would call a traditional demo reel where it's like a single 2-minute video that goes through a bunch of things. Those are good to have as a sound designer. So in other words, if you're just getting started with sound design and you need to sort of showcase your abilities, what you could do is find games that you just take away all the audio and you make your own for it. So let's say there's a battle scene, there's all these swords clashing and whatever's happening, dragon flying in. You could take that scene, let's say it's 20 seconds long, and essentially redesign it. You would redesign the sound for it and then showcase that. Obviously with the clause, like you can't be paid for that unless you find public domain footage, in which case you can do whatever you want with it. But yes, doing redesigns and creating it as a demo reel would be great. On the other hand, for music, creating demo reels for music where it's like a single video of like a bunch of your stuff, 2 minutes long, great place to start. My approach is more like, here's my game audio, here's like 3 tracks from that, here's my singer-songwriter stuff, here's 3 tracks from that. I like just kind of throw it up, very simple, straightforward, very easy to find. There's various ways of doing it. But yes, redesigns, sound design redesigns would be great. And then showcasing that, sharing it. Or even actually, real quick, I'll get to your question in a sec, but like, I'm already thinking like content creation, right? Content creation for Instagram, TikTok, whatever is so important these days. Let's say you're recording, I don't know, silverware to make a sound for a sword. Record yourself recording silverware, and then make it into like, here's how I made a sword clashing sound. Have all your snippets of how you did that. Here's your 20-second TikTok video that does that. There you go. Rinse, repeat. Do that over and over and over. Hashtag indie dev, hashtag game dev, hashtag sound design. You're gonna find people who kind of latch on to that. Send them a message. Hey, I love what you're doing. That then leads to work. It's the same process. But you got to do it in a way that resonates with you. So just an example. Okay. All right. I saw other hands. Go for it.
When did you know, or what got you into just music in general? Like, what point in time you're like, oh, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, great question. So I got into music. I'm the biggest Coldplay fan, but they don't know it. The band doesn't know it. I'm listening to Coldplay since like their first record, 2000. They just released one this past Friday, and it's gorgeous. They got me into like, ooh, I want to try writing my own songs, right? So I started as like me and a piano and singing. Did that, went to school for music to kind of like learn more music theory and all that good stuff. It was while I was there that a friend of mine was like, hey, I'm making a game with my brother, can you help me with music? I need some arrangements and stuff. I said, sure, never thought about doing that. I always loved video game soundtracks growing up. Never thought about that as a career, but it just one thing sort of just led to another. I kind of just followed the doors that were opening, and it ended up turning into what's paying for my mortgage, right? So like it just sort of happened, and I think that's why 2 years ago, not to go too crazy about life story, but I think that's why a couple years ago, when things kind of, like the dust kind of finally settled, things became a little more steady, I was like, man, I haven't been like writing songs in like 10 years, but that was the very thing that got me into music. So then kind of my singer-songwriter brand, and literally my whole brand used to say composer-orchestrator, but I think 2 years ago I changed to composer-singer-songwriter because I wanted to bring that back, because I missed it. I missed that outlet. So I'm doing a bit more with that these days. Yeah, hands, please. We have a little bit of time, so yeah, go for it.
Would you say it's a good idea to create original content for a demo reel?
If you have access to it, yes.
Okay.
Right? I would say most sound designers don't have access to like a fully fleshed out CGI animation that they can create on their own. So that's why redesigns are also helpful because using the term relatability, like the Halo series, Halo, right? Many game developers resonate and know Halo. So if they see Halo being redesigned with your own sound effects, for example, your own music, they're already going to connect with Halo because they have no idea who you are yet.
Okay.
So they can connect to something they already kind of know, which is why the redesign helps them a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Great question.
With all the years of doing this, most of the time have you just gone into things not knowing what you're gonna do, but you still accept it and figure it out as you go?
Yes. Feel like I have learned on the job.
Yeah.
I play the organ on the weekends, for example. When I first got that job, I had never played an organ in my life. I was playing the piano and I was like, he was like, well, can you play the organ? I'm like, well, no, but I'll learn. So that has been my philosophy for everything. So yes, there will be a lot of learning on the job, and that doesn't make you any less skilled than what you already can do, right? All that middleware stuff, I never had to touch Fmod for the first 7 years of my work doing games, ever. I never had to touch it. All the developers are always like, send me the WAV files, send me the music files, just send them our way, we'll take care of it. Say, okay, I learned Fmod a decade ago, but I never had to touch it. Until about 3 years ago, I needed this specific project to really go deep with it. So, yeah, you do kind of learn as you go.
You said that you didn't have to learn Fmod. What did you use before to? Did you just give them the
I
sound?
literally just gave them the audio, like, here's the WAV files, here's track 1, you can program it however you want. That's what they wanted. So there will be times where you don't have to touch the middleware, you can just make the stuff. But I think that's also the appeal in many ways for, like, in the AAA world. Like the lead composers, for example, on World of Warcraft probably, I don't know their entire process, but I can almost be certain that some of them never touch middleware. I can almost be certain that many of them just kind of create the stems. And like, there's probably an audio editor or a music editor who sort of does all the implementation stuff. I could be wrong. I could be way wrong. But I do know some studios where it's literally just a music composer who makes the music and then they don't touch it. They just get it recorded and someone else does the rest. So the bigger the team, the less you kind of have to do. Yeah.
Something I can vouch for is that trying to program effects like delay and reverb in a game engine is very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. So things like Fmod and stuff where you do have access to equalizers and you can automate delay and all that, it does go a long way. Yeah.
Do you get burnt out? And if so, since like you obviously like you more focused on indie, indie realm, and you're doing most of the composing alone,
Right.
and all the mixing and everything.
Yeah.
How do you get yourself to like not be like so tired of like listening to the same thing or like so?
Yeah, I love this question. Yes, I've gotten pretty burned out. In fact, when I first started this career, I worked with my friend on his one game. And it was after that I was like, ooh, I'm gonna do some solo stuff. I don't wanna be an assistant, I just wanna do my own thing. I was making stuff in the first 2 games I worked on that I got paid to do, didn't come out. The 3rd game I signed on to, I did a bunch of music for that. He kind of gave up the project, said that one didn't come out. So I had 3 games in a row that I got paid to do, probably over the course of 2.5, 3 years. No one ever heard it, saw it, no one even knew this stuff existed. So I was like so frustrated that I took a brief break from it, because I was like, I just can't stand this sort of like, I'm putting in all this work and not much return. But it was during that lull that a buddy of mine, Call of Saginaw guy, was like, hey, I love what you're doing. I love your choral piece. He said, I love your choral piece of all things. Can you work on my game music? I was like, that's random, but sure, yeah, I'll give it a shot again. But even now, I mean, even lately, there's the ear fatigue aspect, so I always recommend for all of you, whenever you deliver anything, even for one of your assignments, please take a nap or sleep before you, listen to it, say, okay, I think it's done. I'm gonna sleep on this, listen to it again the next day. Please, I implore you. Because you're gonna hear, there's something will be there, I promise. That your bass needs to come down 0.5 decibels or something, like those little details. Sleep on your stuff. So ear fatigue is real. Take breaks, reference often, reference mixes, reference sounds. Always use them, always. Goes a long way. Yeah. Okay, let's start with you. Yeah.
With that being said, if something's not being released, when they don't get released, are you allowed to release the music you made for it so people can still hear it?
And that's why the contract is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why in the contract, if nothing else, even if your contract is 2 sentences long, you want to make sure, do you own the rights or do they own the rights? I've been in a situation very recently, won't say who, won't say how, won't say where, but I was in a situation recently where my contract said I owned the rights, but let's just say things didn't work out that way at the end, and it was kind of a thing. I was like a little frustrated by it. But it's why it's so important to make it extremely clear. And ever since that time, I have been way more adamant about making it extremely clear of like, this is who owns it. This is what the person who owns it has the right to do. So, yeah, go for it.
Do you copyright your stuff with like BMI or ASCAP or CSAC or anything like that?
Yep, I'm with BMI, so I always register everything with BMI.
Even if it's a little snippet or?
Yes. So BMI, the Performing Rights Organization, the PRO side of things, yes, I register everything. Do I send everything into the copyright, like the U.S. government copyright office? No. I don't always do that, because technically speaking, copyright laws, I think sometime in the 70s.
Because you have a digital footprint.
Yeah, right, yeah.
But you do register the title and,
The length, the instrumentation, all that stuff, yes, with BMI, yeah.
but not an actual sound recording. This would be like a lead sheet of the music or something?
It's, so BMI only ever asks for just the title of it, the length of it, the authors of it, like who wrote it, if there's lyrics too, and the instrumentation is generally what they look for. They don't actually ever ask for a recording, interestingly enough, but.
So you're the composer and the publisher.
Yes, yeah.
Now, if somebody's interested in your work, do they try to buy you out and try to, do they buy it outright or
They
do you
could.
get residuals for the game sold or whatever?
It depends on the project. So like the Minecraft one, for example, the Minecraft one is, they own all that, right? That's why I literally had to use YouTube, because I'm not allowed to even download or have the actual video on, like, I don't own any of that. It's there, so it's streamed off YouTube, right? That's why I can't even put full disclosure. Since they own everything, I would have to get special permission to put the specific tracks on my website as a portfolio piece, because it's like they own everything. But with that comes a bit more money, right? So usually if there's ever anyone, whether you do games or not, if someone wants to take your rights and own whatever you created, generally that means, rule of thumb, is you would get a little bit more money from that than if they didn't own your rights, right? Because if you own all your rights to everything you make, if you own it, you can sort of resell it, you can use it in other ways. Obviously the contract describes those details, but if you give away your right to do anything with it, my suggestion would be try to get a little bit more upfront money out of that, just because they're literally taking away your ownership, right? They're buying you out, so you get no royalties from that after that. Yeah.
Is there any sort of, in the game music industry, game sound industry, is there any sort of like representing body, like a union or anything that you are part of?
I don't know. In fact, if there is, it's not very. I honestly, I'm not even speaking that, because I don't know. I do know. I know of some friends who have talked about like composers unions and stuff, but I don't know if they're actually a thing. If I'm being completely honest, I wish I had more info for you.
Ted, are you aware of such an animal?
No, not a composer's union.
Okay. Yeah, I've been riding solo. Everyone's just kind of doing it. It's like everyone's just like, we're just kind of all in this doing our own
So
thing.
you don't have an agent, you don't have a manager, you're a self-made entrepreneur.
Right, the multiple hats.
Mhm.
Now, the higher up you go, like someone like the name Austin Wintory. Who knows Austin Wintory? The name Austin Wintory. Okay. If you haven't heard his music before, just search Austin Wintory. Doesn't matter what game it is, you're gonna cry. It's beautiful. His stuff is just good. It's so good. He definitely has an agent. Like he's like, if you want to book him for stuff, like it says please contact so and so. So I will say the higher up, the more demands you have, you will. It's worth pursuing an agent. I'm just not at that point right now. I kind of just want to one-man roll it for a little while until it like doesn't make sense. Although I will say I've been more and more getting to the point where I would love to outsource. Like I outsource all my mastering at this point. I would love to get to a point where I can outsource all my mixing, because it's such a time sink. As you know, it's like you make the stuff and then you're like, well, I got to spend another 40 hours mixing it now, so it's tough. All right, so it's 12:30. I know you had some other little housekeeping stuff to do. So any final questions? Anyone here anyone here interested in getting into game audio? Maybe not as full-time, but as a part of your, right on, amazing, okay, great. So, please, any final questions? If you're interested, especially, for those who are interested in thinking about this. Okay, oh, okay, all right, there it is, there it is.
Thank you, Tony.
Please, anytime, please reach out. If anything, you wake up tomorrow and you're like, oh, I forgot to ask him this, just literally contact me, okay? Open book. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Yep.
That was great.